Hi, welcome to How to Repair. Have you got a Beko cooker or any of the brands that Beko manufacture for, and it is not heating, tripping the electricity supply, or only working partially on one of the functions on the oven, either on the selector switch or on the programming on the more modern machines? If your oven is not heating, it may be a fault with the fan oven element. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how to diagnose the problem, how to test the element, and also how to replace the element. On these cookers, we have to actually take the cooker out of situ to be able to gain access to the fan oven element. The element we're looking at on this cooker is part number 262480012. It's an 1800 watt element, and this element can only be accessed via the rear of the machine because the screws that hold the element to the chassis are now from the back, not from the internal side. You still have to undo the internal side, but you need to remove the cooker to be able to gain access to the element. Common faults that can occur with these are when you're on a multiple cooking function, there are combinations of elements in use. Now, if I turn this just to the fan oven element, and I'm going to zoom in for you here, when you actually turn the thermostat on, the actual indication light for power going to the element is on the timer. So if I turn that on here, you can actually see a little thermostat lighting up there. When you turn it off, this goes off. This means that power is going to whichever element is associated to the function on the selector switch or the programming. If this is lighting up, this eliminates the problem with the thermostat and normally indicates that it's a problem with the element, or sometimes can be a fault with the selector switch. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to take the cooker out, which is timestamps, so you can jump through to the appropriate section of what you need to be able to diagnose or replace the fan oven element. If you have a freestanding appliance, it's easy to work on. But when you have a double oven like this one or a single oven like this one, we're going to need to take it out the housing first to actually work on the appliance. Okay, the first thing that needs to be done, you need to isolate the electricity at the fuse board because the plug for this appliance may be behind it or in an adjacent cupboard. You may have it hardwired as well, and this needs to be dealt with before we lift the cooker out of situ. When accessing the fuse board, you may have a single oven or a double oven. This is a 16 amp supply, this is a 32 amp supply, or you have the main switch. Turning these off, but if in doubt, you can always turn the main power to the property. Now that you've disconnected the electricity, it is safe for you to actually start removing the oven. Now what we need to do here now is remove the actual door, not only for the purpose of lightening the load on the appliance, but also to make sure that no damage occurs to the glass when we actually take the oven out of situ. To remove the oven door is quite simple. Just open it up. On the early models of Beko machine, there will be some catches on either side that you need to bend over to actually take the whole hinge out of the frame. But on the more modern cookers, there are a couple of catches that we need to press down. And just pressing these catches down on each side, and I'll put an exploded view of this in the side here, you will then be able to actually release the two pins on the door. Take the door up to its natural position, and then you will be able to slide it away. Now we're able to remove the interior of the oven. Now we're ready to take the cooker out, but on double ovens you will need a table, and I suggest putting a towel on top of it, and you may need two people to actually lift the cooker to get it out. With a single oven, I just use a small crate. Putting this down, we are then able to remove the two screws that hold the actual cooker to the chassis of the cabinet. On double ovens, there may be up to 6 screws. Now that you've removed all the screws, we're ready to lift the cooker out. Putting your hand inside the oven, carefully lift the oven over and slide it out, dropping it down onto the case. Now, if you are using a larger oven, you will need to actually have some help doing this. We're now able to turn this around to the side, making sure that you're not pulling the cable too hard. Then we'll be ready to disconnect the appliance from the electricity. If your oven is plugged in, you'll now be able to remove the plug. But if it is hardwired in, we have to undo the electrical connection. You may even have an isolation socket behind the cooker. To remove, just put a small screwdriver in, and there's 2 clips on this that you need to put your screwdriver in just to lift up. But to double check everything, do go across the live and the neutral connection to check that there is no electricity present. As there is no electricity present, it's safe to undo. Undoing the retaining clip, move that away. Now we can undo the live, the neutral, and the earth. The cable can now be pulled out and put safe. Okay, now you've got the cooker out of situ and you've learned how to take the door off, because it does make it much easier for working on the appliance. We need to actually remove this top panel, which is 2 screws on either side, and then at the rear of the appliance we've got 3 screws on the top and multiple down the side. It will vary from model to model. The top panel will come away, but be careful of the edges, they are sharp. On some of the Beko cookers, the panel will hinge away, giving you access to the appliance. Okay, now we've got the cooker disconnected from the electricity and ready to work on. The easiest test is to do a continuity check on the element. The element itself is the most common item that will blow on the fan oven setting. And it's a straightforward test. Just take the 2 wires off the actual element, then setting your meter up to continuity. And I'll just zoom in for you there. Turning the meter onto continuity, we can now test across the element and we have continuity. But you could also check it for the wattage. And this is basically turning the meter to the ohms reading. And if the element is got continuity, we would be actually able to do an accurate ohms reading. Now, with that ohms reading, putting it into an Ohm's law calculator with our voltage, which is 240 volts, the calculator will calculate that the wattage of this element is approximately 1800 watts. If the element is open circuit or you have no continuity at all, then the element needs replacing. You don't need to go any further on this. But if you have an element that is tripping the electricity supply, then this is a totally different test. We actually need to test the element now for leakage going to earth. And this, we have to use a different meter completely, but I will show you a way that you're able to test your cooker for this without using the meter. To test the actual element for earth leakage, we have to use a device which most engineers will have, but I do not expect you to own this at home. This is called an insulation tester, sometimes known as a mega or an appliance tester, and it is able to either test the whole appliance to make sure it complies with the regulations, or it is able to test an individual element. Now, using the earth clamp, I will just attach that there, and then I need to use a test lead as well, plugging that in, and then connecting this up to the element, the live on one side, the neutral on the other, and I will have to connect the earth as well. And I'm able to turn the meter on, and I'm able then to do a class 1 test on this element to make sure it complies with the regulations with regards to the electricity that you have on your consumer board. If it is leaking to earth and it fails, this would actually detect the problem with the element itself. And pressing the actual test button there, and I'll zoom in while it's testing for you, you're able to see that it's doing an earth count, an insulation test, and also a sub-leak test. And this element has passed, meaning that it is not causing a problem with your earthing system in your house. If your element is actually leaking, the only way you can test it in the household without one of these meters is to actually isolate the element completely. This means actually insulating these 2 wires, and then you would actually have to plug it into the electricity supply to see if the actual appliance does not trip the electricity like it used to before the element was connected. This way you would be able to eliminate the problem and say, right, the element is what's causing the problem, it needs replacing. You must remember that multiple elements combined can also cause problems with the actual earth leakage. So sometimes, if it's an old appliance, you may have more than one element tripping the electricity supply, and it is only a process of elimination that you have to go through to work out which elements are tripping the electricity. Now, if your oven's not heating at all, the next test we need to do is to ascertain that we have 240 volts or whatever voltage you have around the world at the actual element. Okay, we have to reconnect the element up for doing this test, and we're going to be doing a live test as well, which means you should only do this if you're competent with electrics. But I want to explain something which I think is not being printed in manuals correctly. The manufacturers never actually state in their manuals that the thermostat should not be turned on when using the selector switch. Let me explain why. Thermostat points are designed to actually come on and off, sending electricity through to the appropriate element on the cooker. The selector switch is there to select whichever elements are in use during the cooking process, but are not designed for the high ampage that goes through them when actually changing the control to a different program. It would cause sparking on the contacts and therefore wear the selector switch out much earlier, because these contacts, although they're designed for that ampage, they are not designed for opening and shutting the different contacts on the selector switch while the load is on the machine. This causes sparking and also causes heat to be generated not only at the contacts but on the cam as well, and this can also melt the cam or actually cause the sparks to burn so much that they carbonize and therefore are not able to conduct electricity correctly. Just a top tip for you, that one. Right, to test the actual oven is quite straightforward, and as I said, you should only do this if you're competent with electric. I'm going to plug the appliance back in now and turn it on. Right, we've got our selector switch set there, and I just need to move the cooker slightly and turn this to manual because it's on auto at the moment. The oven will come on with the fan because it's set up, but the thermostat is not on. You can see the wattage on the screen here now, and I'll zoom in for you. We are drawing 65 watts. That is because the light is on for the oven, which is 25 watts, and approximately 40 watts for the fan motor, which is running here. If I turn the thermostat on now, you will see this wattage go up now, and we go up to just over 2000 watts. This is the actual element with the light and the fan motor. Now, if you haven't got a meter like that, and you need to test whether the element is working or power is going to the element, you would set your multimeter up to the 240 range in the UK or whatever voltage you're using around the world, and you only need to go across, and let me get these connectors out of the way so they don't go into the fan motor. You only need to go across the two terminals here to understand that the element is receiving 240 volts. Therefore, you know that the power supply coming from the selector switch and thermostat to the element is working correctly. By turning the thermostat off, you will see that the power disconnects on the meter here. Goes back down to 76 watts. Turning it back on again, of course, the contacts on the thermostat are now closed, allowing electricity to go through to the element. Now, disconnecting the cooker from the power supply again to make it safe, I just want to explain other faults that can occur. If you are not getting power going through to the fan oven element, you want to visually inspect your selector switch. This is one of the most common faults, as I said earlier, that can occur with the appliance. And I'll bring this up to the camera for you. On the actual selector switch, each one of these contacts is sending electricity through to the appropriate point on the cooker. Base element, grill element, inner and outer, fan oven element, fan motor, cooling fan, and light. All these actual selectors have their appropriate contacts. Now, with more modern cookers today, with circuit boards, these are controlled with relays. Either one of the contacts possibly on the actual selector switch is burnt, or possibly one of the relays on the modern cookers may have failed, and it is possible to replace these. but you need to ascertain which relay on the circuit board would be causing the problem. And you can see that in another video as well. By the way, I've also done videos on how to replace the base element, the grill element, and all the other components on the cooker as well. And lastly, before we actually change the element, I want you to be aware of the relay on the actual timer. Sometimes people have power cuts in their house and the cooker goes off, or the oven has tripped the electricity and they may have even replaced the oven element, but the oven still is not working. This could be because you've either got the cooker on automatic and forgot to set it to manual, or it is possible on some occasions for these relays on the timer to go faulty. So it's worth checking the feed in and the feed out on them as well. Next, we need to remove the element, and this is straightforward. As the cooker is round this way, I'm going to show you how to do this. Remove the 2 wires off the actual element, and then just behind the insulation here, and I'll zoom in for you here, you can see there are some screws, and you need to undo these screws, and there will either be 2 or 3 screws in total. Try to always keep the insulation intact, as this is what keeps the heat in the actual oven. Then we will need to turn the oven around, and inside the oven here we have the fan guard that we need to remove. Okay, I'm just going to put my torch in here for you to see. Here is the fan guard, and on this fan guard there are 4 screws. On some fan guards there are only 2. The fan guard will drop down and will come away. You then have 1 screw at the bottom which holds the element to the back wall. I actually have a blown element here to show you. This element has actually split on the side here if I bring this up for the camera, and you can actually see that it's distorted in shape. To replace the element is basically straightforward. Just follow the procedure in the opposite way. Fit the element. Make sure that you either get this screw attached first or the ones at the back. And it's usually easier to do this one first, because you will have a little bit of movement to line the element up correctly at the top. Then we can actually put the fan guard back in and reattach all the screws. Going around to the back of the oven again. Make sure you line the screw holes up correctly. Try and make sure you tuck all the insulation around the element so it's tight and therefore not letting any heat out. Reconnect up the electricity. And there we go. I hope this video helped you fix your cooker or oven. Remember, if you have any further questions, I will need your brand, your model number, and a detailed description of the fault. Or you could upload a video to YouTube and send us the link. You can either use the comments below or the contact us page at the website, and the link is in the description below. And if you do need any parts for your cooker or oven, remember some parts are serial number dependent, so make sure you have all the relevant information before ordering the parts. Thank you very much indeed for watching this video. If we really helped you, you can always click on the Bipolar Beer page to support the website, as that's what keeps us going and able to make these videos for you. Thank you very much indeed for watching.